When Kelly Clarkson sat in that chair on her talk show, smiling through the weight of her own unraveling, most viewers didn't recognize what was really happening. It looked like another heartfelt moment from a beloved host known for her openness and emotional honesty. But beneath that familiar warmth was something far more fragile. A woman holding herself together in real time, her voice betraying the strain of everything she had been carrying. It wasn't performance, it wasn't dramatics, it was exhaustion meeting truth. That crack in her voice wasn't sudden. It was the culmination of years spent building a life that quietly began slipping through her fingers. And what made it more powerful is how invisible it all seemed from the outside. Fame, success, a thriving career, everything suggested stability. But real life doesn't follow the script people expect. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones silently breaking behind the scenes. To understand that moment, you have to look beyond the spotlight and into the life Kelly had carefully constructed, and then watched fall apart. Because her story isn't just about heartbreak, it's about identity, loss, resilience, and the quiet courage it takes to rebuild when everything familiar disappears. And before we get to how she rebuilt, we need to understand exactly what she lost, and why it changed her so deeply. The silent beginning of the end in 2019, long before headlines told the story, the real unraveling had already begun. Kelly sat across from her husband, Brandon Blackstock, in a silence that said more than any argument ever could. There were no dramatic confrontations, no explosive fights, just a quiet understanding that something fundamental had shifted. Anyone who has lived through that kind of silence knows how loud it can be. It signals not just conflict, but distance, disconnection, the slow realization that what once worked no longer does. Brandon wasn't just her partner in marriage. He was deeply embedded in every part of her life. He managed her career, influenced her business decisions, and shared responsibility for their children. Their lives weren't simply intertwined, they were fused. So when cracks began to form, it wasn't just emotional. It was structural. Every part of her world was affected. Untangling that kind of connection is not simple. It's not just about separating emotionally. It's about redefining where one person ends and the other begins. For Kelly, that meant questioning years of decisions, partnerships, and trust. It meant confronting the uncomfortable reality that the life she had built wasn't as stable as she believed. And that realization doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, disguised as doubt, discomfort, and silence. Until one day, you can't ignore it anymore. The collapse of a shared world. When Kelly filed for divorce in June 2020, the public saw headlines, financial disputes, custody battles, and legal negotiations. But what the public couldn't see was the emotional collapse happening behind the scenes. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the dismantling of an entire life structure. Kelly had believed in permanence, in commitment, in the idea that if you gave love everything, it would hold. So when that belief broke, it didn't just hurt, it disoriented her. She wasn't just grieving a relationship. She was grieving the future she had imagined, the plans, the assumptions, the certainty. She later admitted she never saw divorce as part of her story. That admission carried something deeper than sadness. It carried confusion. When something you believe in so strongly falls apart, it forces you to question your own judgment, your own instincts. It makes you wonder what you missed, what you misunderstood, what you could have done differently. And while the world speculated and analyzed, Kelly was left trying to navigate a reality that no longer made sense. The emotional weight of that kind of loss doesn't fade quickly. It lingers, reshaping how you see everything, including yourself. When a life that looked perfect started to quietly break at first, nothing about Kelly Clarkson's life suggested collapse. From the outside, everything looked stable: successful career, a strong marriage, 2 children, and a public image built on warmth and authenticity. But the reality inside that life was more complicated than any headline ever captured. Her marriage to Brandon Blackstock wasn't just emotional, it was structural. He was her husband, yes, but also her manager and business partner. That meant their personal and professional worlds were fused together in a way that made separation feel impossible at first. When things began to shift, it didn't show up as one dramatic moment. It showed up as distance, silence, emotional fatigue that neither side fully addressed out loud. That kind of breakdown doesn't announce itself loudly. It develops in the background while life continues forward on the surface. Work still happens. Family routines still continue. But something underneath stops aligning the way it used to. And once that misalignment begins, it doesn't reverse easily. By the time Kelly and Brandon were sitting in quiet conversations that said more than words ever could, the foundation had already started to crack. What remained wasn't chaos, it was realization, the slow understanding that what once felt permanent had become uncertain. The public smile and the private wait when Kelly Clarkson launched her talk show in 2019, she was stepping into one of the most visible phases of her career. The show quickly became known for its warmth, humor, and especially her emotional musical performances. But behind that bright public presence, something far heavier was unfolding privately. Every day she walked onto a stage, connected with audiences, sang songs, and projected joy. Then she returned to a life that was no longer emotionally steady. That contrast creates a specific kind of exhaustion, one where you are constantly performing stability while internally processing instability. The pressure wasn't just professional, it was personal. Her marriage was dissolving quietly during the same period her career was expanding publicly. That contradiction, success on one side, collapse on the other, created emotional tension that most people never saw. Her performances during this time started carrying a different energy. Songs that once felt like entertainment began sounding like confession. Not because she intended them to, but because lived experience inevitably changes interpretation. When someone is carrying emotional weight, even familiar lyrics start to shift meaning. What audiences were witnessing wasn't just a talk show host. It was someone navigating two realities at once, one seen, one hidden. When two different breakdowns moved on parallel tracks, the emotional landscape Kelly found herself in wasn't unique in the world she was part of. Others in the same industry had walked through similar fractures. One of them was Blake Shelton, whose divorce from Miranda Lambert in 2015 had already shown how public relationships can unravel behind private doors. Their separation shocked fans because it disrupted a narrative of stability that had been carefully built over years. For Blake, the aftermath wasn't just about ending a relationship. It was about rediscovering identity outside of it. When someone becomes deeply intertwined with another person for a long time, separation doesn't just remove a partner. It removes a version of self. Around the same broader timeline, Gwen Stefani was also navigating her own ending with Gavin Rossdale. Her experience carried its own emotional weight, shaped by trust breaking after years of shared life and family. What makes these stories resonate is not celebrity, it's familiarity. Many people understand what it feels like when something foundational collapses while life outside continues unchanged. Careers don't pause, responsibilities don't stop, but internally, everything is being reevaluated. And in that shared emotional space, connections sometimes form, not out of romance but recognition. The understanding of what loss actually feels like when it is lived, not observed. Rebuilding without a safety net, unlike others who found emotional rebuilding alongside a partner, Kelly's process unfolded differently. There was no shared recovery arc, no parallel love story forming in the background. Her rebuilding happened independently, while life continued demanding her presence in public. Her divorce from Brandon Blackstock introduced not just emotional separation, but legal and financial complexity. Custody arrangements, financial settlements, and ongoing negotiations created additional layers of stress during a time when emotional recovery was already fragile. At the same time, she continued working. Her talk show remained active, her performances continued, and her public presence never disappeared. That kind of endurance requires a specific kind of discipline, functioning while processing, showing up while healing. Over time, changes began to appear, not sudden transformation, but gradual shift. A relocation to New York signaled a desire for environmental reset. Health changes reflected a focus on long-term stability, emotional tone in interviews softened into something more grounded and self-aware. What emerged wasn't a version of her defined by loss, but a version shaped by integration, someone who had carried pain, processed it, and continued forward without allowing it to define her entirely. Rebuilding alone doesn't make the journey easier, but it does make the foundation entirely personal. A parallel story of heartbreak years before Kelly's divorce. Blake Shelton had experienced a similar kind of collapse. His split from Miranda Lambert in 2015 shocked fans and left him struggling to understand his own identity. Their relationship had been highly visible, deeply admired, and seemingly unshakable. When it ended, Blake described feeling lost. Like a part of himself had disappeared, he spoke openly about hitting a low point, drinking, isolating, and questioning who he was without the relationship that had defined so much of his life. That's the thing about long-term love. It becomes part of your identity, and when it's gone, you don't just lose the person, you lose the version of yourself that existed with them. So when Blake later watched Kelly go through her own public divorce, he didn't just sympathize. He recognized it. He understood the silence, the confusion, the emotional disorientation. Different circumstances, same emotional landscape. When two broken stories found each other during Blake's darkest period, someone else was navigating a similar storm, Gwen Stefani. Her marriage to Gavin Rossdale had ended after years together and 3 children. The breakup was deeply painful, marked by betrayal and emotional upheaval. When Gwen joined The Voice, she wasn't stepping into a new opportunity. She was stepping into survival mode. She had to perform, smile, and function while internally processing one of the most difficult chapters of her life. And then she met Blake. Their connection wasn't instant romance. It was recognition. 2 people standing in the same emotional wreckage, realizing they weren't alone. That shared understanding created something real, not built on fantasy, but on honesty. Over time, that connection evolved into something deeper, something healing. They didn't fix each other, but they supported each other, and eventually they rebuilt something new together. The contrast that defines Kelly's journey, while Blake and Gwen found healing together, Kelly faced her own rebuilding process alone. That contrast matters because it highlights something often overlooked. Healing doesn't always come with companionship. Kelly didn't have a partner waiting on the other side of heartbreak. She had responsibilities, children, a demanding career, and a life that needed to be reconstructed piece by piece. And she did it publicly. She launched her talk show in 2019, right as her personal life was unraveling. Every day, she showed up, smiling, engaging, connecting with audiences, while privately navigating emotional exhaustion. That kind of resilience isn't loud, it's quiet. It's showing up when you don't feel ready. It's continuing forward when everything inside you wants to pause. Music as therapy and survival, one of the most powerful aspects of Kelly's journey, was how she used music to process what she couldn't always articulate. Her performances on her show became more than entertainment. They became emotional release. Songs she had written years earlier took on new meaning. Lyrics that once reflected past experiences now mirrored her present reality, and audiences felt it. When she sang, it wasn't just performance, it was honesty. It was grief, strength, confusion, and resilience all woven into sound. And that authenticity resonated deeply with viewers who were going through their own struggles. In a way, her music became a bridge, not just for herself, but for millions of people trying to make sense of their own pain. The legal battles behind the scenes while Kelly was publicly maintaining composure, the legal side of her divorce became increasingly complex. Financial settlements, custody arrangements, and ongoing disputes added layers of stress to an already overwhelming situation. Reports of significant monthly payments and property disputes painted a picture of how complicated separation can become when lives are deeply intertwined. It wasn't just emotional, it was logistical, financial, and exhausting. And yet, despite the tension, Kelly chose not to publicly criticize or attack. She remained composed, focusing on moving forward rather than escalating conflict. That restraint speaks volumes. It reflects emotional discipline, maturity, and a commitment to protecting what mattered most: her children and her own peace. Choosing growth over bitterness. What stands out most about Kelly's journey is not the pain she experienced, but how she responded to it. She didn't disappear. She didn't allow bitterness to define her. Instead, she leaned into growth. She made changes, moving her show to New York, prioritizing her health, and creating space for a fresh start. These weren't superficial decisions. They were intentional steps toward rebuilding her life on her own terms. She also confronted something deeper: self-forgiveness, letting go of guilt, regret, and the endless what-ifs that often follow heartbreak. That process isn't easy, but it's essential for true healing. A new definition of strength today, Kelly Clarkson represents something different than she once did. Not just success or talent, but resilience, independence, emotional honesty. She didn't just survive heartbreak. She transformed through it. She learned that wholeness doesn't come from another person. It comes from within. And that realization changes everything. Conclusion: the power of choosing yourself. Kelly's story isn't just about divorce or recovery. It's about rediscovery. About learning that even when everything falls apart, you still have the ability to rebuild. Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani found healing together. And that's beautiful, but Kelly found something equally powerful. She found herself, and sometimes that's the harder path. The quieter one, the one that doesn't come with celebration or headlines, but it's also the one that creates the strongest foundation. So the real question isn't whether her best years are ahead or behind her. It's this: what happens when someone who has already survived everything finally steps into who they were always meant to be?